I am so excited and deeply grateful to have such a special guest on the show today. Salvatore, thank you so much for your time and welcome to Empowering Vibes.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
You were born in Italy in 1941,
Yeah.
so during World War II. Would you take us a little bit to what circumstances you grew up in?
Well, of course, I was very small during the war, but I remember my father used to talk to me and tell me the tragedy that they went through. The family, they had to go to the mountain all the way because in the valley, in one side there were the Germans, and the other side there were the Allied. And so the Germans didn't allow nobody to stay there because could spy. And so the family had to go to the mountain, and in the mountain, of course, they had the proper clothes. There was a lot of misery. They didn't have food. They were living in a hut made of straw, and also in some area there were epidemic due to the lice infestation that people have, and they put hygiene and the crowd they have, and there were no insecticide DDT at the time. In some area there was typhus, and people were dying of that. So they went through a really what we call hell, because that area where my parents used to live was close to Monte Cassino, and Monte Cassino was the front for the area from the top of the mountain when the German controlled all the advances of the Allied troops. And
Wow.
yeah,
Wow.
and so what happened was that my father used to tell me about they had to burn the huts every 2 weeks, more or less, and the women, in order to prevent for the lices to spread, they got the inner cloth that were made of wool, put them in a big cauldron, and put snow, melt the snow, and boil the cloth. And of course, eventually the tragedy was that in the winter time, to dry those clothes, they had to be close to the fire. So they really were very primitive situation, the way they had to live.
Which is for us today not even imaginable. And that's why I think it's so important that you are sharing your story and sharing what it was like not even that long ago, what you went through.
Yes, it's true. It's true. The only thing we see, we watch a show on TV and we enjoy through the TV, sitting in our sofa and going to the refrigerator and have a drink in between. You know?
Absolutely. And therefore, I think it's so inspiring what you went through, because you're now you wrote a book, you're a doctor. So I would like to take the audience through this amazing journey of the circumstances that you grew up with to the life that you're living today. So from Italy, you immigrated to Argentina.
My parents.
Is that right?
Yes, in 1948.
Yeah, your parents Yes. Yeah. So would you take us through this immigration journey and what your life looks back at that time?
Okay, so what happened was my father was a worker and he worked in the ceramic. And in 1947, of course, Italy was all destroyed. There were no job. There were no opportunity. So the factory moved to South America in Argentina. And 60 specialized people, worker, bricklayers and carpenter, etc. They moved to Argentina with a contract for 2 years. And of course, when my father went to Argentina, he was obsessed about the war. He had lost his brother during the war, his brother-in-law. And so even his father had disappeared. They didn't know what he was. And so the horror of the war made him to go almost at the end of the war in 1947. So what happened was that then we Argentina was a peaceful place. There was plenty of food. So my father decided that we should settle there. So with my mother, my brother, and myself, we went to Argentina in 1948 and studied in Argentina. And what happened was that my father have elementary second, third degree grade in school because they were poor. They had to take care of the sheep and goats. The kids had to work, they had to produce for the family. And so what happened was that but he had all the time the desire to read, and so that's why I learned from him. He installed in me just a little basic thing that he knew that opened my curiosity. To, for instance, the idea of the music. He didn't know too much about opera or whatever, but he remembered that when he was a child, close to the church once in a year, three or four musicians, a small band, used to come and play segment of the operas. And for him, the word for me, opera was, that word sound like so eventually I became self-educated about the opera. That's why I love it now. But because of him installing me this curiosity about and so on. And in the beginning, I didn't want to study. So my father was so frustrated with me. I was 8 years old. 8 years old. Who want to study at 8 years old at that time? At that time. And so what happened was that close to my house, some priest came to preach whatever. And one day I was running around with the other kids, and this priest started to talk to me, and he showed me a picture of a horse, a pony, and they showed me the kids were playing soccer, kicking the balls, and so they said, "Would you like to come to try?" So I told my father, I called my father, saw the opportunity for me to say, maybe I will I will study, I will become somebody. So I went there. I was 11 years old. The separation with my mother and my parents was very hard for me. And the priests were a German priests, and the discipline was tough. Was tough. In the first year, I didn't do well, but eventually, I start to understand and learn, and I start to open up my eyes and start to get acquainted with history and this and that. I got motivated. And so I started gradually there, and I was there for 7 years. But the discipline, like I mentioned before, was very harsh. I became, they were very, there was an open questioning. I got in trouble because as I became a teenager, I started to ask questions. And I was reporting in front of the superior, and the superior called me, and I was a small kid, and the superior called me and he said, "Well, if you don't behave and you follow the instructions, you're going to be expelled. And what are you going to do if you get expelled? You are no intelligent." And at that time, I didn't pay attention to that because we were punished for any stupid things. But eventually, as the year passed by, that word, "you are not intelligent," started to resonate in me. So, in spite of adversity, I accomplished something in life. Another way, I was able to look at the sun. For the shadow, I was able to look at the sun.
That is amazing. Were you always a positive person, focusing on everything like on the positive side, or was that something you learned or that you got taught by your dad?
Well, something that I learned gradually because in the beginning, I was, I didn't have an orientation. The problem with me was I never had a guide. Even when I came
Hmm.
after I went to medical school, I graduated in Argentina after 7 years. I went to Italy and eventually I came to the United States. It was I didn't know what I want to do because you see I was insecure. Nobody guided me. Nobody told me you had to do this, you had to do that. For instance, when I came to United States and my title, my degree was not recognized here, so I had to go to take an exam called ECFMG, that for a medical graduate outside United States and also the United States graduate. And I was surprised to the exam because I never saw multiple. I was 28 years old, and I didn't know what multiple choice was. And imagine to reason at the time. And the first time I went to take the exam, I didn't even know there was a timing. So I used to get up because I was tired or whatever, and I used to go to drink some water and walk a little bit. So eventually the proctor said, "You have half an hour to finish," and I didn't even had done half of the test. So imagine the panic, and I start to end up in a disaster. But that was the experience I had to get through life, through falling down and get up, falling down and get up. No, nobody told me, listen, I was in a tunnel and I saw a little light at the end of the tunnel. So I just aimed for that light. But when I reached that light, there was a label written dead end. So I had to go back and try to go right or left or whatever. And that's have been my life, have been uncertainty. So
Yes, absolutely.
even today, now that I will be almost 82 years old, when I look back, honestly, when I look back, how I manage to do certain things, of course, now I don't have the energy and even mentally I had the desire, but the energy are not there anymore. So what happened? Sometimes I get very nervous. I get very scared because I said, how did I do it? Even myself. I said, how I managed to do this and that, in spite of all the adversity. I had to tell you, when I was in Argentina, my parents never could buy me books because they were to be immigrant in Argentina in 1948 was you're at the bottom. And so what happened was my friends, whoever studied in Argentina at that time, they were the son of the lawyer, the doctors, estanciero, people, they own a lot of land and they have a sheep, a cow, you know. And so I was really the son of the immigrant. There was nobody. And so that's why, for me, the desire to study, to become a professional, is against all the odds. So what happened was my friends, La Plata, the University of La Plata where I studied, when, excuse me, when they used to go to Buenos Aires, Friday, the weekend came, and they took off to go to Buenos Aires, have a good time, whatever, okay? And they used to come back 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, Monday morning. So that was the time when I borrow their books and I study. And sometimes when I couldn't get the books, I used to go to the library and borrow the books from the library. But those books, they were like a papyrus. They were missing pages, stained or underwritten. And so that's the way I study. I managed to, and of course, not everything was rosy. There were moments that I was down. I was very down psychologically, and more than one occasion I want to quit. And I remember my father used to say, son, try one more year, see what happens. At least you can say, well, I went to medical school, I have 2 years of medical school or whatever. You see, people, there was no really a future. There was no a goal to look for. It was just, I said, well, you go and you proceed as it can. Whatever happened, it happened. And it's not, there was a planning. There was no planning because you don't have a hope. So that's why it was when I came to this country and I saw the opportunity this country would offer me, of course I had to pass the exam. I had to train. After I passed my exam, this allow you to apply to the hospital for a training. And I spent 5 years internship and residence program. You are like living in the hospital for 5 years. And already I had done 7 year college, 7 year medical school, and 5 years of training in this country. So when I started to practice, I was almost 36, 37 years old when I started to make the first penny. So it was noisy.
And very, very impressive, really. What helped you? You said you were even told you're stupid, then you didn't know what multiple choice tests are, so you had to really go through all these adversities. And what helped you to get the confidence that you then had, or you now have, or you then had as a doctor?
I first of all want to add that when I came to the United States, I didn't speak English. I didn't know English. So imagine to understand the multiple choice for the exam. So I had to borrow money from my relatives and go to university, New York University, for several months to learn the basic English. And I remember the first night I was reading preparing for the exam, I was with a dictionary there. And it took me almost 2-3 hours to read one page to understand the meaning of the page, and sometimes with the dictionary I got the frustration because, for instance, the word makeup is two words combined. So how do I look in the dictionary that I couldn't understand that? So talking about being disappointed, I say, well, it took me like 2 hours to read the one page. How am I going to be able to finish this huge book here? So, but see, no experience and nobody guide you. So it's been like a ship being in the middle of the ocean and you are at the mercy of the wind. You see the horizon, but you don't know where you go, east, west, north, south, whatever. You don't know where to go. And this was my life.
Incredible. What helped you to always hold on to your dream of becoming a doctor, even though you had so many challenges?
Well, first of all, I felt a responsibility for my parents, because they sacrificed their life and they did everything for me. And so I felt guilty. Besides that, what happened was during my training with the priest, I became very timid, shy, and that didn't help either. And but all the time I say I want to succeed. I want to become somebody. And I remember I used to talk to my mother, and with my mother, I used to say, Mom, one day the sun is going to shine for me. And so that was my desire to succeed. So when I came to this country and I saw the opportunity, I remember I used to stay, when I came to this country, I stayed with my uncle and aunt in the Bronx, Palm Parkway, and so in New York. And so I used to go to the library there to study, to prepare for the exam. And on the way back, there were days in which, days of the month, in which the people put the garbage outside to be picked up, and there were refrigerator, there were bicycles, and I say, this is the land of the honey, whatever, like in the Bible say, I say, I never saw over there. You patch, you fix, you don't throw away anything. Here, so the kids used to leave the bicycle outside the sidewalk. Nobody would pick it up or whatever. Okay, nobody would steal that. So I said, to me it was in my naive way. I said, this is the land I want to be. So that's why I applied myself, and I said, this is the land where I want to stay and create, have a future and have a family.
Beautiful. Thank you for sharing. What role would you say has gratitude played in your life?
I'm sorry?
What role would you say has gratitude played in your life?
I don't understand the question. Can you explain to me?
Like, how do you think, like, you had so many challenges and hardships, and during all those hardships and challenges, how important it is to yet be grateful for everything we have in our lives?
Definitely. Because what happened is that I went through a lot, but being in the medical profession, and I had done for over 40 years, I ended up being chief of surgery in 2 hospitals, in spite of my accent. And so, and being in touch with so many patients, doing thousands of surgery in spite all the adversity, I still was a lucky guy. I was compared with somebody else suffering. So that's why I'm very grateful to God, whatever, that He was able to. I went through a lot, but I accomplished something, and I can function on my own. Some other people, for diseases or handicap or whatever, they cannot do that. So that's why I'm grateful for the luck or whatever.
It's so beautiful and impressive that you have this attitude and this mindset. And I think this really inspires a lot of people, for sure.
Thank you. And so, like I say, nothing was easy. There was a prejudice. And I can tell you, in my early years, we used to have a group of daughter and friends, whatever, and we used to go to ski in Canada, Montreal, Saint Jovite, and we were like a 5 or 6 cars with our kids. I have only one daughter, and I remember one time coming back, and my wife said, we were reaching the border to come in the United States, and my wife said, let me drive. I said, no. I said, I'm comfortable. I can drive. And she said, let me drive. So we arrived to the border, and of course, the person, the guard, whatever, asked document, whatever. So I have my passport, I have my ID, identification card, and he noted my accent. And so he said, you have a voting registration card. I said, no, I don't have that. And so he gave us hard time. So, and he detained us my daughter was small, and my wife was furious because I'm an American, he's an American citizen, he's my husband, he's working in the hospital, you can call the hospital. My father is lieutenant colonel, I'm going to call my lawyer. After 1 hour, they let us go. All right, so one. Another time, I was doing surgery, and I was covering the chief of surgery, that he was not around. And so they told me that to go in to see this patient in consultation. And I went to the surgical floor, I saw this patient. It was a tall person. And when I introduced myself, and already I noticed there was a wall between him and me. There was a barrier. Anyhow, I examined him, and happened he had a very hot gallbladder, infected gallbladder, and they required was spiking fever. He required treatment. So I give the advice: you have to have surgery. Now you can have another opinion. You can go to see somebody else, but shouldn't be waiting for the chief of surgery to come back, because you cannot wait a week. You can get in trouble. So he told me, well, Dr. Forcina, let me talk to my family. Okay, fine. So the following morning, before I went to the operating room, I went to see him. And as I walked in, he was there, the wife was there, the two daughters were there, and another member of the family. And he said, good morning, Dr. Forcina, this is my wife, this is my daughter, this and that. He completely changed from one day to another. So I said, when are we going to do the surgery? I said, well, I went to the head nurse, the station, and I say, what happened from yesterday to today? So he said, oh, the head nurse told me, you know, Dr. Forcina, since you left, he was asking everybody that walked into the room or were walking in the corridor about you. And of course, I have a good reputation. And so eventually with the surgery, he did fine. But you see what I'm saying? In different degree, there is a barrier, there is some prejudice, but you have to go through. You have to, if I cry, nothing happens. So you fall down, get up, and keep going. That's when the child learns to walk.
Absolutely. How would you say has being an immigrant shaped you?
Well, I have a tremendous experience, and I have a lot of respect for the people that want to improve their life. They live, because being an immigrant, leave their own country, leave their own family, the dear people, with the friends with whom you grow up, and you're going to another country in which you don't speak the language. The customs are different, the food is different, and you have children or whatever that they cannot integrate right away with it. It's very, very sad. I remember when we moved to Argentina, my poor mother went through the war. She was around 30 years old. And she was isolated because we were living outside the city in a rural area. There was no asphalt in the street in our area. And I remember we didn't have telephone, there was no TV, there was no radio, there was nothing.
She didn't speak Spanish.
And she didn't speak Spanish either. So she didn't have friends. So her desire was to receive news for her family. And the only news that she got was through the mail. And so I remember being a child, we were in the street kicking the ball, but the ball that we made was a socks with the cloth inside, and we wrapped that, and we kicked the ball until the round thing became like a sausage, you know? And so my mother used to say, "Sal, have you seen the mailman?" Because she was waiting for a letter from her sister-in-law, because she once in a while the sister-in-law sent a letter. And I remember when occasionally she got the letter, she used to sit down there, read the letter, and reread the letter. It's like she was trying to squeeze juice or discover something that was hidden in some place there. She, with her own fantasy, whatever, she wanted to transport herself to her own land. So those are the things, that really shook my life. So that's why I saw that. And at a very early age, I started to understand my obligation, my responsibility. My parents never came to, I was in medical school for 7 years. My parents never came to check on me because they trust me.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing. This is like a life that today, where we're so connected, everybody, like it's so important that we're still reminded that not that long ago life looked like this, and how blessed we are that you and me can, even though we're so far from each other right now, connect through technical devices, and you can share your story with so many people. And like that, we're actually so blessed with everything we have in our life.
I have a tremendous gratitude to mainly for this country. I have such a respect and gratitude because I became somebody. When I was only a dream. I was like a small seed at the mercy of the wind. And that seed depends when the wind blow you and land, you can end up in the top of the rock, you're on top of the middle of the desert, I was able to root and have a flower, grow and produce a flower of that. And so that's the beauty about life. That's the way I see
Absolutely.
it. That's the way I see it.
And that's a wonderful perspective. What would you say has success taught you about yourself?
Everything is limited. Success is good, and I appreciate. The success didn't come very easy, because what I regret, I have only one daughter, my daughter Vanessa, and I remember when I started my practice, nobody knew me. So I had to be around the hospital night and day to be available to assist somebody, because I had to make a living. And so what happened, my wife used to take my daughter to play soccer and my wife was all the time alone. I was never there. And so many wives eventually used to talk to her, and they used to wonder if she was a widow, if she was divorced. And so, and that in some way eventually, you cannot be in two places at the same time. It's like they say, when the people go hunting, you cannot chase one rabbit at the same time, two rabbits at the same time. And so there is certain thing that you pay the price. But and now that I'm retired, I try to compensate. For instance, I'm in New Jersey right now. I live in Florida, and then retired in Florida. And so I came here for 1 week, and here we are. 2 months, I'm still staying with my daughter. So, I say, it's no sense of guilt, but you feel that I have a granddaughter, and that book is dedicated to my granddaughter, Lennon. And the main reason was because I used to go to a party, and like I'm talking to you, I talk to other people. He say, you have an accent. You have an accent. Where do you come from? I say, I come from Italy. Italy. I have been in Italy with my husband. We visit here, we visit there. We like the food and this and that. And we start to talk about. And eventually say, what do you do? I'm a doctor or whatever. Okay. And I start to mention a few things like I'm talking to you. And so the person say, more than one occasion, say, wow, that's a wonderful story. Look at you. You came from overseas and you had to, you studied with our books and you had to, came to this country and you start all over again. And so that's a beautiful story. You should read that and you should write that. You should make a book. And I never pay any attention to that. And on more than one occasion, people told me that. So eventually, as you get older or whatever, you slow down and you say, well, maybe I start to write a few things. And I send this to my daughter and say, Daddy, that's beautiful. You should write a book. So eventually I say, you know what? I want to put everything down for my granddaughter because she's 7 years old now. But I'm not going to be here forever. And I hope that when she's going to the teenage years and life, she got to make a decision about things. I don't want for her to make the wrong decision that she got to pay the consequences. Maybe, perhaps, one night when she's down or whatever, okay, she opened this book and she read one chapter or whatever, say, wow, that was my grandfather in my own blood. Look what he accomplished. And maybe she can say, well, she start to reason and she can say, well, he didn't have nothing. He accomplished something. And I have everything. I have a radio, I have a telephone, I have a heat in the room, I have a television. I'm complaining. I have a car and I complain. So maybe, maybe I can open her eyes or whatever. I don't know, whatever. So, maybe can bring something positive about life.
For sure you will. And I'm sure your daughter and your granddaughter are both
Yes,
so proud of you.
they do. They are. Yeah. So,
For everybody who would like to read your book, where can we find you? Where can we find your book? Like, how can we get in touch with you?
They can follow me on Instagram, that's Salvatore Forcina, MD. The book is called The American Doctor. And the book you can pre-order on Amazon and it's released on March 14. The reason why I call The American Doctor is because when I was young, to be a professional, to be a doctor was like to be in the top of the mountain. And American Doctor is because that mountain, the Himalaya, I conquered the top of the mountain. I was able to put the flag in the top of the mountain. So that's why for me to be a doctor in America was be able to go on the top of the Himalaya.
And you fell
Oh,
down so many times and got up
li-
every time again. And that is just
listen,
so inspiring and
climb,
beautiful. So
I
thank
climbed
you
the
so much.
mountain barefooted and with my hand without gloves. So,
And
well,
yet you made
yes,
it.
yes. So that's why I want maybe be an inspiration. If I just, the way I think, if I just able to inspire just one mind, look at this. You have Einstein, Galileo, Pasteur, just one person alone, what he can accomplish with the discovery of helping humanity. If I'm just able to convert or influence one single mind, can be a big thing. Because, listen, there was no choices for me. There was the possibility for me to become somebody is minuscule, and still I accomplished something. So why somebody like a youth in this country, with all the thing, the facility that you have in this world, and you have everything fertile ground, why can somebody cannot succeed? So that's it. That's it.
Absolutely. And
Good. That's the
yeah,
question
keep
I
going.
have. How come you have everything and some people just go in the wrong way?
What would your answer be to
Well,
that question?
I think, you see what happened, look back at myself. I made a lot of mistakes because I didn't have a guide. I didn't have a guide because my parents, they were simple people. Just, but my parents gave me motivation. There was something inside that was like a charcoal, the burn and the ashes cover, and you had to blow the ashes to activate the flame. And that's what happened to me. But some people don't have that motivation. Somebody had to activate that inner inside the desire to be somebody. And so the advice that I have is, first of all, the parents, to help the parents, because the parents are the best guide for their own child. And the teacher, the priest, rabbi, pastor, whatever. And, you had, and the communication. Today's the communication, you can get information for anything. Everything is possible. I didn't have nothing of that. So that was my life.
Yes. Yes, and that beautiful thing is if somebody's listening right now and or watching and like lacking motivation, maybe you are especially like that guide that somebody needs and you are the one who ignites that flame. So thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for putting your whole story into a book. Everybody listening or watching, please get Salvatore's book. It's absolutely beautiful. And Salvatore, to you, a huge, huge thank you for being here, for your time, and for being such a
Thank you. It
beautiful
was a
inspiration.
pleasure to talk to you, and I really thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you too. Now, I would like to know from you, what was your biggest takeaway and how can you put it into action starting now? Leave a comment below or hop over to Instagram at @HannahWiz_ and leave a comment under the post of today's episode. Thank you so much for watching and never forget to shine your light.